One issue that we're told did play a significant part in the election outcome was the emotionally charged debate over asylum seekers. But from the time he became opposition leader, Tony Abbott campaigned strongly on the issue, and it was identified as one of the crucial elements provoking a hemorrhage in Labor's vote during the dying days of Kevin Rudd's prime ministership. Having declared in his final public statement as PM that he would not be lurching to the right on asylum seekers, Mr Rudd now has the job as Foreign Minister to find a nation in the region, starting with East Timor, that's prepared to host a processing centre for asylum seekers en route to Australia by boat. We're told this week that asylum seeker ranks have now swelled to the point that Australia's detention centres are full, and the man who has to manage that challenge is the new Immigration Minister, Chris Bowen, who joins me now from Canberra. Chris Bowen, as the new Immigration Minister, you've undertaken to fashion a more mature debate on asylum seekers. But will you also undertake to stop the boats, or at least significantly reduce the flow, because that's the debate that the opposition will continue to prosecute?
Well, Kerry, we are dealing with a set of issues which is global, complex and enduring, and the opposition can engage in their sound bites, in their sound grabs. They might seem to think that saying you're going to stop the boats will stop the boats. Tony Abbott seems to think if he stops the north of Australia like King Canute and says, I'll stop the boats, it's going to have some sort of effect. Of course, we are taking a more mature, responsible approach, which recognises that we've had waves of asylum seekers over the last 30 years, and you need to learn from history. And history teaches us that they are best dealt with by two factors: concerted regional and international efforts, which is what we're engaged in, and an improvement in circumstances in the home country. They are the two things which can have the biggest impact, and that's why the focus of our efforts is on the regional framework for a solution.
When you heard Kevin Rudd on his last night as Prime Minister say that he would not be lurching to the right on the issue of asylum seekers, what did you understand him to mean by that?
Well, Kerry, I don't think the traditional right-left divide is particularly appropriate when looking at what is a complex issue. I think you can take a range of approaches, and people across the political spectrum can have a range of approaches. I come, for example, from Western Sydney, and a highly multicultural area of Western Sydney, an area where many refugees have settled. They have a range of views on this issue. Many people who've come to Australia as refugees know, for example, that there are 43 million displaced people around the world, spread around the world in camps, and you need to take a very mature approach to that. So I don't think the traditional right-left divide is a particularly useful way of looking at this issue.
But that is how Kevin Rudd meant it, is it not?
Well, you'd need to obviously put that to Kevin. I've discussed, obviously, our regional framework with Kevin, and he certainly supports it. I have carriage of it as Minister for Immigration, but of course, from time to time, it will be appropriate for him to deal with his Foreign Minister counterparts, as I'll be dealing with my Immigration Minister counterparts in establishing this regional framework.
So what's your first step? Is it to go to East Timor and to try and prosecute that case? Because you would have to acknowledge that Julia Gillard damaged her credibility quite significantly in the election campaign by being seen to rush to that solution as a political solution during the campaign without having properly prepared the groundwork.
No, I don't necessarily accept that characterisation, Kerry. We've said that East Timor...
Well, many other people have.
Well, we've said that East Timor is the focus of our efforts for a regional processing centre, but just as important is the regional processing framework. That will require me to be having discussions not only with East Timor, but with a range of countries across our region, Indonesia and Malaysia, of course, as well as New Guinea and others, spring to mind as countries with which we'll need to be discussing this issue. And I'll certainly be doing that, and when appropriate, Kevin Rudd will be doing that with his counterparts.
And what do you think is a reasonable time frame for Australian voters, Australian people, to allow you to actually deliver on an agreement that produces a regional processing centre?
Well, Kerry, I'm happy to say that this will be obviously one of my key and early priorities. However, I'm not in a position to put a time frame on it. I think you'd understand I've now been Minister for Immigration for, I think it's about 4 hours. I have been focusing on this issue.
I'll bet you have.
But there is more thought and discussion to go into our approach with our regional neighbours about this.
But you do accept that this is something politically, quite apart from policy considerations, politically, this is something that that people will be looking to this government to deliver early as a matter of credibility?
Look, I understand the importance of this issue in people's minds. I understand that people want to see progress on this issue. I think people also understand that whenever you enter into a set of discussions which are international in their focus, which are complex, then that will take some time. And Julia Gillard made that clear when she first put this policy on the table. She made it crystal clear that this was not an overnight thing, that there would need to be some thought to go into this. Kerry, you have a choice when dealing with issues such as this, which, as I say, are complex and global and enduring. You can go down the cheap road of sound bites. You can go down the cheap road of saying we'll turn the boats back, or you can engage in a mature discussion both domestically and internationally, and that's what we're doing.
When you spoke with Kevin Rudd, how did he make it clear to you that he was enthusiastically on side in embracing this regional solution?
Well, Kevin Rudd, as Foreign Minister, indicated that he would support my efforts as the Immigration Minister with the carriage of this proposal to enter into any necessary discussions with his counterparts. That's as appropriate. That was certainly the arrangement when Chris Evans was the Immigration Minister and Stephen Smith was the Foreign Minister, and that's the arrangement that Kevin Rudd and I will continue.
But by the same token, you have to acknowledge that, on that night, Kevin Rudd was driven by some obvious passion in relation to this issue, and the implication of it was that he was under pressure inside the party to, quote, lurch to the right on this issue. That's why I'm asking how Kevin Rudd has now made it clear to you that he will embrace this particular aspect enthusiastically, not just say, listen, I'm going to support you.
Well, as I say, he's indicated that he will provide whatever support and assistance is necessary. And I'd make this point, Kerry. There are a range of people involved in this debate, refugee advocates, people who actually take these issues very seriously, who acknowledge that a regional framework is appropriate and desirable.
The Western Australian Premier Colin Barnett said today that he's got nothing more than media reports and gossip from within the bureaucracy to go on with regard to the Commonwealth's plans to expand asylum seeker accommodation in the West, and you've acknowledged that Australia's detention centre capacity is now full. But the gossip and the media reports that he's talking about include a claim that 1,800 people at Curtin Air Force Base and an unknown number into Northern Army barracks outside Perth would be accommodating as part of the solution. Now, are you going to make this process transparent? Are you going to make plain now, or can you make plain now, exactly how you're going to deal with this accommodation problem?
Kerry, I do acknowledge there are real and serious pressures on our accommodation system. There's a range of factors leading into this, which I'm happy to go into, but I will be saying more in coming days about how we intend to deal with that. But I will be engaging in that very seriously. I have been already, and I do acknowledge that there are real and significant pressures on our detention centres. They arise because of not only more elevated arrivals, but also an increased rejection rate. As you'd understand, when you reject an application for asylum, then there is a process which has to begin to repatriate that person, as opposed to when you approve a claim for asylum, that person is then released from the detention centre quite quickly. When you have an increased number of rejections, that puts more pressure on our detention system. So there's a range of factors going into it. I will be saying more in coming days about how I intend to deal with it.
The number of boat people or boat arrivals this year is far in excess of the previous year. When will you reverse that trend? I'm not saying by how much, but when would you expect to see a reversal in that trend?
Sure. Kerry, we need to put this in context, of course. Over the last calendar year, of course, we've seen a 29% increase in asylum seekers in Australia. There was a 36% increase in New Zealand. Over that same period, 222,000 people claimed asylum in South Africa. There have been very big increases around the world. So yes, Australia is being impacted by that, as are most other developed nations around the world. But what we're doing is engaging in that regional solution because, as I said earlier, history shows us that international efforts are what has the best impact in reducing the number of unauthorised arrivals, and that's what I'll be doing. Others can judge whether that's a success or not. I'll be focused on the job.
Chris Bowen, thanks for talking with us.
Nice talking to you, Kerry.